Hey, welcome everyone. My name is Jeff Mills. I lead partner marketing here at DBT Labs. Welcome to today's conversation of around scaling reliable analytics in the AI era. We're joined by two leaders from Databricks and DBT Labs to have a really rich conversation about what it means to you as data leaders and your data teams. Before we get started, I want to make sure that everyone's had an opportunity to register for Coalesce. It's our annual user conference taking place in Las Vegas. If you're looking for a last minute reason to join us in Las Vegas, this is exactly the right reason for that. If you're unable to join us live next week, please go ahead and register for our virtual session where we'll be streaming lots of our sessions as well as all of our keynotes. It'll be great learning and excitement for everyone here on the phone. Now, before we get started, I want to walk you through just a few housekeeping items around how today's conversation is going to go. First, there's a Q&A tab that you should be able to see. Please put all your questions in there. We've got live, real human beings here to answer your questions while the conversation's taking place. If you want to chat or have a conversation with your fellow attendees, please use the chat function to do so, highlighting what you like about the presentation. The thing that I'll ask if you're having that conversation while we go is to be both kind to your fellow attendees and your presenters. We want to make sure that we have a respectful and inclusive conversation. And so we're glad you're here, and please share your feedback in the chat. We are recording today's conversation, and so over the next 24 hours, you should get a copy of today's presentation. Hopefully it's valuable enough where you'll want to forward that on to the rest of your data team or other data leaders within your organization. And then we really want to make sure that the time that you've chosen to spend with us, which we're very grateful for, is of value to you. And so we'll be sending out a survey about today's content, and we'd love to hear your thoughts that way as well if you're more comfortable doing that. Now let's go ahead and get kicked off. I'd like to welcome both David Totten and Ryan Segar to the stage. David Totten is the AVP of Field Engineering for Databricks, and Ryan Segar is the Chief Product Officer for DBT Labs. Hey, thanks, David and Ryan, for being here. Ryan and David, would you mind sort of introducing yourselves to the audience and your roles at DBT Labs and Databricks, respectively?
Sure. Yeah, I'll start. I'm Ryan Segar, Chief Product Officer of DBT Labs. I've been with the company for 3.5 years in various roles. I was Chief Customer Officer shortly before this, and I live out in Moraga, California.
Yeah, awesome. And David?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff, and always good to connect with Ryan. I work here at Databricks, been here 3 years. I run our strategy and scale here in field engineering, just trying to make sure that Databricks is easy to use and available for all of our customers. That's my gig.
Awesome, thanks. And I really think it's going to be impactful for our audience that both of you have go-to-market customer-facing roles, because that's who's on the call right now. Is folks who are doing the work and leading teams doing the work. So that's fantastic.
Yeah.
David, can you talk a little bit about your team's focus? You talk about strategy and scale. What does that look like at Databricks right now?
Yeah, we're growing pretty fast. You can do some askjeeves.com searching and sort of find some news on us, and as we've continued to extend the platform. But when I got here, it was the Lakehouse and Delta file formats, and since then we've launched tools and products like Unity Catalog and DB SQL and Lakeflow Connect and our own entire AI stack. We're launching something called Agent Bricks in the past year. So we are expanding the stack and seeing a lot more customers trying new technologies and services. And so it's my team's accountability here within field engineering to make sure that the product is available and that we help customers leverage it for all their business and AI use cases moving forward. So that's what we're focused on. And we'll talk about it during the session, Jeff, but AI and how customers are leveraging, some vibe coding tools and some text to code applications. And then obviously how they implement AI in their systems and processes is top of mind for all of our customers. So I'm spending a lot of time making those applications and processes a little more seamless.
Awesome. And Ryan, you got promoted to CPO back in May. Congratulations again. But moving from Chief Customer Officer to Chief Product Officer, what's been your biggest surprise working with our customers over the summer in that transition into CPO?
Yeah, gosh, that's a fascinating question. I've been in the data space most of my career, And if you look back, even just at my time here at DBT, whenever I had a discussion with a customer, I could walk in and maybe guess one of 20 things they wanted to talk about, depending on the industry or the new hot thing in the market. Um, Ever since taking over as CPO, almost every discussion I have is centered around AI, no surprise there, and Iceberg. And the interesting thing to me is I get asked a bunch of questions about them individually, and a lot of people still have not correlated to find the common ground, how essential Iceberg and the strategy is to a scalable AI strategy. And so we end up having a lot of very constructive conversations. Even companies that have really done a good job adopting both pieces of tech are still trying to figure out the right way to build and scale systems for the future. And they're openly asking for help because they know how expensive making even one mistake can be. And so that to me was surprising. It's become really cool. I run both product marketing and product management here. And so it actually gives us the ability to focus finally in a space, as David and team know, right, is anything but focused most days of the week. And so that was probably the biggest surprise to me coming in was really the 2 points that people are all talking about and are all really trying to come together uniquely, partners and customers for the first time to find common ground. So that's been really cool.
Yeah, and Ryan, we're going to come back to that standards conversation. So let's put a pin in that here just for a second. But David, I want to come back to you. We have over the last year, 2 years, really expanded the DBT and Databricks partnership, and through customers like FanDuel, like OneTrust, or sorry, not OneTrust, Home Trust. We're seeing DBT and Databricks working really, really well together for our customers. How are you thinking about how we help our customers accelerate the value they're getting on Databricks?
Yeah, great question. I mean, what we see the most for, and I think DBT Labs is probably one of our stronger partners in market. I mean, there's a lot of different ISVs and services partners that we work with across the platform, because the core tenet of what we're trying to do with open source is get the data in the lakehouse architecture. We took a bet on that a long time ago. We believe that's the right architecture for customers to have ultimate power and control of their data in a quick, efficient, more productive way. And we think that customers can be able to manage and have access and drive analytics on top of their data more cheaper and more efficiently than what they've done to date. So once you get the data into the lakehouse, well, people actually want to do stuff with that data. And so this relationship with DBT Labs is, okay, I've got data in and out of the lakehouse. I can leverage DBT for that process. I can also do a bunch of stuff once it's within that lakehouse format. And I would just say that Ryan hit on it. We don't really believe, and I know we'll talk a little bit about this, the standards and the data formats, they don't matter anymore because of how DBT actually integrates directly and manipulates data directly within the lakehouse environment. It integrates seamlessly with our data governance and catalog system called Unity Catalog. And so customers have ultimate flexibility to leverage, obviously, first-party tools and processes, or they can leverage historic pipelines and the analytics engines and visibility, observability on all their data, like they've always done through DBT. So trying to make those integrations seamless, I think we've probably done the best job between DBT and Databricks, if you think about any other partnerships out there, where we don't want it to be considered these sort of two different environments that you have to sort of manage and move and access data within. I think the integration between our two platforms shows that, hey, put your data in the lakehouse format, whatever format it might be in, and you can run all of your pipelines, optimizations, direct SQL editing within DBT Labs, and it's all governed by the lakehouse Unity Catalog construct. And it should be, again, pretty seamless and painless for the customer to do so.
So it's really interesting because Ryan was, over the last year and a half, we have seen in our industry the rise of standards and the promise of interoperability. So to hear can you expand a little bit on the comment of like standards don't matter? Or is it that it becomes less vendor locked, if you will? Yeah. How does interoperability play in the standards conversation? I want to expand on that with both you and Ryan about how we find ourselves in a place where the rise of standards, the rise of interoperability, and how we both kind of think about that world that we're helping create.
Yeah, let's take it from the former view. Vendor lock-in shouldn't really be a thing at this stage. We want customers to have access to their data and the ability to process and drive analytics on top of that data as efficiently as possible.
Yep.
And there are a lot of key features, functions, aspects of leveraging machine learning and really valuable AI models because people were in different formats. Did I have the right tools to grab that pipeline, build that pipeline, run that job? Can I stick it in the most efficient compute and storage environment on the world? If I was in a different format, it was very, very challenging, right? So formats are still a thing. I mean, there's still different types of data formats and storage out there in the world. But what we've done at Databricks, and again, tight partnership with DBT, is it doesn't matter what format your data is in. You have access to managing it, building jobs on top of it, driving analytics and machine learning use cases, and then governing and securing and having observability over that data, regardless of what formats it's in. Now, Databricks went out and actually sort of hired the people that built Hootie and hired the people that built Iceberg. And obviously, Databricks is where Delta started. So we've got some pretty good domain expertise of building that that fabric to make sure that customers can actually have visibility and access controls to their data in any form or fashion. But the process of getting that data into Databricks is still a journey. And DBT has been our best partner in the planet on how do I actually get access to that data and get it into the lakehouse architecture. That's why I think our partnership is so strong, because they've also broken down the barriers of all the, DBT has broken down. I say they, you're on the phone with me. Why DBT has broken down the barriers of it doesn't really matter what data format you're in. We're going to put it into a single environment. You're going to have observability and job practice controls over all of that information data, no matter where it came from. And again, I just think that service principle of data is data. We'll take the hard work and the confusion and the integration out of the equation for our customers and just make sure that if you have data and you want to run jobs, we can do it efficiently. We can also have observability control over that information and who has access to it. And then we'll just do it a lot more efficiently and productive than any other hyperscaler relationship in the market.
So Ryan, let's expand on that just a little bit, because I think it's the sort of whatever standard you have, you should be able to use it. I think that's a really important guiding principle. But for us, then, what does that mean for the AI journey that people are on, having varying levels of success with? That are, a lot of people on the phone here are leading data teams. They're trying to figure out where to apply and how to be successful with AI in their organizations. And so, how does this standards conversation influence or impact how people should be thinking about how they're building AI tools?
Yeah, so we're paying for a lot of old sins, right? Like David said, the evolution on how people think about the data stack, right, has changed very rapidly. If you go back into the modern data stack, you had a whole bunch of point solutions. It was basically a kit. You could pull a whole bunch of different applications or workflows or languages and put it together yourself. And then that evolved into more of the platform play, where all the boxes were consistent across, okay, you need EL, then you need T, then you need observability, right? And the list goes on and on. Of course, you need storage and compute, right? And then that changed. Where is storage and how does that live? Is it as tightly coupled with compute? Iceberg says no, right? And I applaud Databricks as a partner, especially because, like David said, they started with Delta, but they're proof, right, of a bleeding edge partner for us in the ecosystem, and just the ecosystem in general, that said, well, we have Delta and the world wants Iceberg. And so, yes, they hired all the Iceberg people, which was a great move. But that is an open standard, right? That wasn't something that was made proprietary to Databricks. And maybe 10 years ago, it would have been, right? And so that's all symbolic of this. I say that because that is exactly what the world needs to fix its data and AI problem, right? This is no different than why BI has struggled forever, right? And how we haven't been able to move it forward. It's just that people are now looking at the problem, looking at intent and context driven by observability and saying, this is now a huge problem for me across my entire business because of the money and the pressure I have to be successful in AI. And so the more that we can come together as vendors and integrate more natively to adopt more open standards, whether it be open lineage or open storage or the next open thing after or on top of DBT, that is what is going to unlock really the success that people can find in consistency in their infrastructure that will lead to consistency in whatever LLM they use today. And certainly it's going to change tomorrow, right? But it has to be consistent under the hood. And we've never been able to achieve that before. Now we have the opportunity to.
Yeah, let me sort of add a little bit that what Ryan just said there. I mean, it's really key. We're both open source proponents, obviously, and we think about the speed to innovation is so much different now than it was 10 years ago. 10 years ago, the vendor lock-in, and hey, I worked 20 years for a hyperscaler based out of Redmond, Washington, little startup, and I would just say that like the technology curve has been historically slow. In certain environments, what open source has proven to us is there can be solutions and packages and individual components to do exactly what Ryan said. Okay, extract, I can load here, I can actually do analytics over here. Trying to piece those things together to do it in a single environment has been historically challenging. As technology speeds up and we're leveraging more and more tools and automation and AI in how we build products, same thing as DBT, and how you access and score information and where it comes from and where it goes, you're seeing the speed to that integration is paramount to customer success. You don't want to spend 9 months of a project lifecycle figuring out which data sources matter, how you're going to convert them, how you're going to manage that transfer and load, how often do I need to update those jobs. Now that I've got the data in there, what tools do I use to drive analytics, observability, security on top of it? You don't want to waste, 75, 80% of your annual IT product budget cycle, right? Like figuring out what we would call the basic infrastructure. And what open source and sort of like the integration of our platforms has done for customers is it speed that time to market and value for what they can do with their data to actually make it usable, instead of just worrying about how to get to it, how to manage it, how to store it, how to load it, how to access it. And I think that that's a really huge component. Standards are critical. And if you have the right governance and observability strategy, everything else falls into line, right? And so keep the right infrastructure principles in place, make sure you've got a governance strategy on top of it, and then take the best that you can possibly find in this fast iterative cycle of open source technology of how to access it and what you can do with your data once it's in a secure environment. Yep.
Appreciate you guys expanding on that. I think it's incredibly important because I think the folks joining us today are trying to think about like, how do I stay current? How do I make sure that my infrastructure is as flexible as possible? Ryan, the thing you said about BI as an ex-BI guy myself hurt a little bit, but it's true. I spent 10 years working for BI companies and, solving some problems, causing some others. And so I think that's really important. One of the things I also want to make sure that our audience learns is some new things. So I've been in the data and analytics space longer than you, actually. Ryan reminds me he's younger than me frequently. And that is...
I don't look at
Yeah. I learned a new word this summer that I didn't really understand, and that's transpilation. I had no idea what that was. I'd argue probably some folks on the presentation today don't know what that means either. But after spending some time with you and really digging in, it seems incredibly important. Can you sort of share with folks what it is? I thought it was made up. It's not. It's real. So what is it, and why should people care about what that is and how it helps as they're doing their data work and building their data teams?
Yeah. So, David, I don't know how you feel about this, but I feel like the data space needed another overly complicated word to describe the problem that's been here for decades. It's a great question. I think as we're talking about this and the evolution of the space, it's really important to recognize the fatigue that entire companies have felt over the years, and it's only going to get worse. So when I hear transpilation, I think as someone going through a decade-long migration project, only to finally complete it or to get 80% of the way there if they were lucky, and then find out that the company had moved on to the next thing. And in reality, it's not 8 years in, it's 6 months, right, max at this point. And so transpilation in the data space, right, has been a promise where we've been trying to solve for years. How do you, if you take SQL, for example, write a query once and then have it be able to run against any environment, any engine out there, not just what's there today, but what has not even come out yet, right? That is the goal that we really should all be striving for. How do we make it so that the migration word is never used again? right? And so the example there would be, we've invested heavily in the tech that we call Fusion, right? It's the tech that we acquired from SDF Labs. And in most of our literature right now, we call it a SQL compiler, which is true. But at scale, it should be a transpiler, meaning as you write your SQL, as you build your projects on DBT, you should know that they will be able to run anywhere, right? Where SQL is just SQL. And as everybody on the call, as a practitioner knows, a lot of people assume, oh, it's just SQL. It's got to be the same warehouse versus lake versus database, right? And so on, but it's not, right? And so our goal should be to figure out how to, in conjunction with having open standards and open technology throughout the stack, figure out how to open up the language, right? And not get stuck on the individual functions running on one warehouse versus another, right? And not get stuck on what do I do with 10 or 100,000 stored procs, right? That'll make it so that I can never leave the system that I'm on today to achieve my AI goals. And that is actually something that we're really, really close to tracking. And that comes down to a change in how we think about the ecosystem, how things are integrated together. And also, thanks to AI, unlocking that last probably 20%, how can you write code that can be inspected before it's used anywhere and let you know whether or not it truly is agnostic to run against any system before you even make the choice, right? And that's something that's really, really exciting, that both open standards, Iceberg, the fusion technology that we have, and AI are all equally essential for, right? And that's like right at our doorstep. That will change everything about how our users and our companies that are customers of ours jointly think about opening up their potential and the stack itself.
Yeah, thanks for explaining that. Actually, a while back, I used to work for a company that did EDI, which was mapping sellers and buyers in the retail space. And it was trying to create a common language for them to order and invoice each other for things. And so, regardless of the data, it sounds like this is something that our audience should care deeply about. And David, I think also when you start talking about kind of doesn't matter the standard, it's your data, work with it where it is, that this is an extension of that, which is helping deliver on that promise.
Yeah.
Now,
Wait, well, hold on. I want to talk about
okay, go for it. Yep, you're up.
Ryan sort of undersold the value of this logic being reusable, composable across platforms if you do it in the right environment. So you can obviously run Fusion in Databricks. We're the components of, hey, write code once and make it adoptable, composable to actually access wherever you might be finding data from. I have found that the biggest blocker, I think, to customers unlocking the value of our platform, and particularly building the next agentic AI frameworks and systems that they want to do, is because they have a bunch of legacy data stored and accessed in these offline, physical or cloud compute storage combined areas that they just don't get access to. And if we can help them migrate that information to a more robust open sourced environment like Databricks plus DBT, like this is a great example where they are not taking advantage based on legacy debt. Okay, so if you need to take advantage of a new product, a new platform, and hey, really unlock what can AI do for my enterprise? What can AI do for my product development? What can I do for my productivity? But you can't get access to the data in order to build and create those agents and those workflows in a more efficient way. It's like paralysis for the majority of our customers. They all struggle with this, by the way. Every customer struggles with this. So we have a bunch of first-party tools that we believe in transpilers, and we believe in SQL Cloud. We believe in some of these open source standards on how do we actually manage and migrate information. But I can't stress enough what Ryan just mentioned. If you can do it in an environment on top of the lakehouse, that your code is your code, and it'll grab data and it'll help you manage that data legacy moving forward. You shouldn't, like, creating custom code to have to do that is just as dangerous as having legacy applications and keeping that bill on from your old on-premise database or legacy infrastructure. It's just as dangerous because you'll never get out of custom code, and you just have to continue to keep monitoring it and managing it. So getting that data within the lakehouse and leveraging something like Fusion that will help make sure that your codes and your jobs are composable or reusable across a full platform. Really, really important. And that's we're not saying, hey, like you'll be with DBT forever, you'll be with Databricks forever. It's like you deserve, like customers deserve to have ultimate reusability and composability of code blocks, and not to be vendor locked in when you think about how to get data from one environment into another to derive like a really strong business outcome they're trying to do. It just so happens to run on Rails and work really well with Databricks and DBT, but that helps. But like this custom code on how we're migrating or accessing data out of lazy applications is just as dangerous as the historic applications and databases that customers have their data in today. It's just as dangerous. So trying to eliminate a bunch of that customization and rewrite work, I think is a key thesis for both of our companies.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think I was in a discussion last week that was interesting. It was the old debate from probably like 10 years ago is back on how much of the world's data has actually been analyzed. And people are getting stuck in this argument of, no, it's not 98% like it was said years ago. It's more like 80%, right? So they're arguing over whether or not 80% or 98% of the world's data has still yet to be analyzed. It's a huge percent. And it's largely because of this. It's because of these systems that are locked down that we can't get to, and the custom code and the difficulty with migration, right? People want to get to transpilation. They can't get there yet, right? And so rather than saying, oh, it's not 98%, it's 80%, that's not better, right? So we have to go back and attack the problem to figure out how to create that openness, and then we can scale. But until we get there, and it's for the record, right? It's you need 100% access, right? That's the world that we're quickly moving into, especially with AI that can actually analyze very quickly now, right? And it doesn't mean that it's always right, but you can at least get a sense of what's been running under the hood. And we have to go back and attack the hard problem, right? And that's everything that's been locked up, that has been inaccessible, and that is far too opinionated, right, in how it works. And that's where we as vendors, right, need to free you, right, and free your systems and your processes and your companies up. And it's not, like David said, it's not about Databricks or DBT. It's about how we can actually move through this next threshold to make the AI revolution successful.
All right. So let's talk about the AI revolution. One of the things that I continue to hear as I work with customers, and we're recording this about a week before we welcome over 2,000 of our customers for Coalesce. And there is this undercurrent of anxiety around where LLMs, AI-assisted coding, where that leads teams. I'm working with one of our keynote presenters on actually exploring this in more depth, which is what does the current era that we find ourselves in mean for teams, team size, roles, what leadership principles matter. And so let's get into the human aspect of how AI is impacting the folks doing the work. We talked about how dangerous custom code is. Does AI help the teams avoid that danger? But I want to turn it back to sort of a human conversation as to what do y'all think are going to happen to the teams?
Yeah.
Who wants to go first?
I'll start there.
Okay.
This does come up an awful lot. And I think that it's interesting. I've also yet to find, I don't care what the title is, analytics engineer, data analyst, data scientist. I've yet to, and David can comment on this from the field probably more than I can. Yet to find a team that says, we've got time. We don't have a ticket backlog that could take the next year as is before the next initiative starts, or the next migration, or, the next leadership change in the company, whatever it is. And so I always focus there. AI is not coming to replace the analytics engineer, or the data engineer, or the data scientist, or again, all the different titles. I do see it starting to make a huge impact on being able to burn down that backlog and allowing the humans to be able to scale themselves, right? And it's not just to me. People talk about like, oh, don't worry, it's the boring stuff. It's the documentation, which is still incredibly important. And the mundane tasks, yeah, it can take care of that for sure. And we're seeing repeatability there so that you can even set your own standards internally, right? I've got a great customer that is now going as far as to say, when it's inspecting code, even though the code that was generated was correct, they have policies internally on what you can or can't use, right, inside of that code. And they have their reasons behind that. That was an impossible task before AI. It would take too long, right? And a data team would look at that and laugh, rightfully so, with that backlog. And so my hope and what I'm seeing here is, as our users embrace, and I believe it's about 70% of DBT users are now using some type of AI for code gen or Copilot to generate documentation and testing. That needs to evolve so that we can go out of this reactive backlog and get back into the business and start driving the company forward strategically, right? And we all know there's no shortage of where to go next, especially in the AI world, where your data becomes the most proprietary and important thing that you can protect and learn from to compete with everybody else, right? And we need people focused on that, looking forward, not in a Jira backlog that's going to last far too long and in a way that no one could even fund the teams. This is that balance that we've been looking for. And I'm personally really excited to see it take hold.
Yeah, but I see it sort of three different angles. Ryan hit the most major point. You ask around, man. Like, there is not one data team on the planet that's like, you know what? We're typically not busy on Thursdays and Fridays. You know what I'm saying? Like, data teams are always at 110% plus capacity. Doesn't matter. Unless we just stop creating more data as a people, as a society, as enterprises, as companies, which is not going to happen. We create more data today than we did yesterday. And understanding what data is relevant and how to leverage that data is just going to continue to go up and to the right. Okay, so there's never been a data planet on the planet that's sort of like, hey, a data team out there that's, you know what, we've got extra time and capacity, and it'd be fun to be more efficient. It's getting through the backlog, and it's making sure that the mundane and the seemingly very manual work can be expedited to get to other value-added activities that data teams are going to be at. Okay. The second component, I would say, is Databricks is hiring. We're hiring a bunch of people, and we leverage AI in every single aspect of my team. We leverage AI, whether it's vibe coding tools, whether it's an auto generating demo application suite. My team owns the actual, migration and transpilation services of how to get data into Databricks. Okay, like, we use AI every day. We are hiring like crazy. Okay, there is more of a need to sort of think about the future of how to coach what data is really relevant, and then what to do with that data once we get in. Okay, so that's the second piece. Like, even AI is going to continue to show us we can be more effective. We can remove some of those medial manual tasks that we would never get to otherwise. But now we're opening up new avenues of, hey, what's important, and how do I think critically about what data I want to capture and how to leverage that as a strategic advantage, which leads me to my third point, which is we're going to see an entirely different set of resumes in 10 years. Segar and I have talked about this offline. You're going to see a bunch of prompt engineers, right? A bunch of analysts that are engineers and not, hardcore, coding and build from scratch personas. You're going to see developer efficiency and productivity go through the roof, still knee deep in building applications and pipelines, but they can do 10x the amount of work they've been able to do today because of the invent and application of AI. And so these job families are going to remain. You're just going to be more efficient and be able to do a lot more leveraging the technology and tools. And then we're going to take that old school data analyst or that business analyst or even that functional analyst, and they're going to become AI and LLM prompt engineers, right? How do I think about interacting with services and information differently to train and leverage AI to build me that application or that pipeline for me? And you're going to see a lot more of the prompting work that happens versus like, hey, I'm actually just asking questions and building wireframes or wireframes in a static document somewhere. You're going to see the evolution of those job families. So AI is going to obviously dramatically impact what we think about in enterprise and what we think about in technology. but it's only going to expand on the productivity and then the availability of roles to really be AI coaches and engineers, in the future.
So let's dig into the team dynamic just a little bit more. So every year, DBT commissions a survey of data teams across the globe. It's called our State of Analytics Engineering Report, and we put it out every May. And one of the top concerns that, like everyone on our call, leads data teams or part of a data team, continues to say is one of their top concerns is trust in the data team. I had a mentor of mine who said trust is earned by the spoonful and lost by the bucketful. And many data teams feel that they are one or two wrong answers away from having to start over and rebuild all that trust. Now, the tools that they've been using to help put trust back into the data process for them have changed over the years. But we've been talking about trust on the data teams for 10, 15, 20 years. That the person asking the question gets an answer, and there's always something in the back of their mind where they're saying, where did it come from? What am I looking at? Should I trust it? And with AI helping these data teams put more work product out into the market, and the market being their teams, right? And working through that backlog and working on harder problems. How do you all think about the trust gap between the good work that the data teams are doing and the consumers of their data work product always having that little bit of a concern that what they're looking at is old, incorrect, or straight up wrong?
Yeah, so it's interesting with all the exciting tech that we've talked about and that we have at our fingertips now, that this is the same thing that was a problem a decade or two ago, or really always. And I think that this part of the conversation is where a lot of teams and companies have to focus and have to invest. This is an infrastructure problem. This is something that's been there. It's at its core. It's been there from the beginning. What we do, because we have to, again, it's about time and about being reactive right now versus proactive and fixing the problem. Our data teams that are working with the product every single day, it's no different than application engineering, right? Something bubbles up, it's a problem, you knock down that bubble and three more bubble up. And as we go further and further into the layers here, outside in, we expose way more sprawl, right? Project by project. It creates more of that backlog, right? And that's a maintenance backlog. That's even harder, right? And so we need to figure out how to create not trust, in my opinion, but transparency. I think the one thing that AI has taught us is if you tell a user that you're working with whether or not you're sure about the information, or that the definition of a metric in Unity Catalog might actually have 4 different variations, right? And here's how you can understand not just where it came from a lineage, from the pipeline, from all the source checks, but where it could be wrong, or maybe you can interject then your own thought. That leads to trust, right? And that is why we have to have this really paramount shift in infra. This is why the open standards. This is why I'm so excited about Iceberg and the scale that it can bring. And models, right? AI models that always have an actual rating associated to the token, right? We can expose more of that to understand and to give the user enough information to go off of hey, at first blush, this is like a 60 to 70% accurate response. Here's how we can navigate this together, right? Or, yes, in a very basic way, the pipe broke, right? We're in the middle of fixing it. Hopefully, it's being self-healed, and all you have to do is inspect the PR and accept it, right? As we continue to scale this for humans and machines, how we come together. But to me, it's transparency, right? To me, we finally have the ability to say, you're not logging into a dashboard, looking at a widget that may or may not be accurate because the pipe broke, right? It's about giving our smart people enough information to understand what they're working with. And what I found, which is really amazing, they're okay if they know that it's not 100%, because honestly, what is, right? Things are changing so fast to be able to say 100%, which is why people lost faith, sorry, Jeff, but in things like BI applications over the years, they were proven wrong. And they didn't need to understand or couldn't understand what was running under the hood. Now we can bring transparency in, which will actually bring more involvement in from all the different people, technical and non-technical, combined to converge on these problems. And they'll be able to finally have that common language. They'll be able to talk about it in the same way, and they'll be able to experiment, because that's how businesses grow. So that's how I think about this, and where we actually can make a big dent in this problem and change the way that people think and feel about it.
Yeah.
David, do you agree that it's transparency and trust is that transparency is the means and trust is the ends?
Yeah, well, we're going to call you BI guy, Jeff, from now on.
Please do.
Okay. I'll say with Databricks AI BI, with managing and manipulating data, leveraging DBT and Fusion, you can get all the access, and it's very good data, very trustworthy. A couple of things. Ryan hit it on the head. Like, the human body, the genome, is not built to trust blindly anywhere with anything. Like, we're a trust but verify culture. And what Segar just said was the exact apex of how this gets better. Is we're going to open up and we're going to shorten that pipeline between like business user activator and where the data is sourced. We're shortening that pipeline and we're building a transparency bubble around it. So people can trace lineage now within these tools and these access points. People can go in and leverage the latest and greatest technologies between our two companies to actually trial and validate and look at the lineage of a query, of a job, of where information came from and how it was manipulated for analytics. Okay. And so by increasing that transparency, you'll never 100% fix trust between somebody who's a user and a provider. Like, you should see the conversations I have with my utilities provider every week. Okay. Like, there's never going to be just a blind trust that I use that much electricity. That can't be possible. But I want the transparency. And I want to be able to make sure that as we shorten that pipeline, if we shorten that window between like data platform and access to how I'm leveraging, how I'm capturing, and then how I'm leveraging the data, that transparency is going to build more. Trust is still even the wrong word. It's just more foundational information, knowledge, and if you will, like actually empathy. What does an end user need, and what does a data platform team need to provide? We're gonna just shorten that window quite a bit. And so I think Ryan nailed it with the fact that these tools and the technology that we have at our hands make sure that people take their own accountability to a piece of data's version, like how it transpires, how it gets into like the journey, the critical data journey that they're experiencing with. And the more visibility we can give them to that full pipeline, the more confident they're going to be that it's the right information. Okay.
Yeah, gentlemen, thank you so much. This has been a really rich conversation, diving into both the technology things that we're thinking about, the organizational things that we're thinking about. And I'd like to ask each one of you sort of a final question to leave our audience with some parting thoughts. Many of us are knee deep, if not chest deep, in planning for next year. And if you're not, you're going to be soon. And what's one thing that each of you would hope that a data leader puts on their agenda to ask for next year? All right, what's one thing that they're not that maybe folks aren't thinking about as deeply, or if there's 5% of experimentation dollars in the budget, or a foundational thing that absolutely needs to be in there. Like, if you're sitting next to a data leader at their planning session in a month, what's one thing you're in their ear about saying, make sure this is on your list?
David, you want to go first this time?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the biggest thing is AI. We sort of talk about it as this mechanism of it's out there, it's everywhere. And people are like, oh, what's the big bad AI going to do? We want data leaders to think about leveraging 95% of their time, like taking experimentation and driving it into production. And you cannot do that if you're worried about plumbing. You just like physically cannot do it. So how do we shift the persona of being like, AI is something that is right here, right now. We need to be taking advantage of it. We need to be driving analytics and machine learning on the information we already have. And if you're wasting cycles and thought and budget and process, like mental capacity on dealing with infrastructure, on how to access data, what format should it be in? Do I have observability? Like, can I look at what I'm spending on my data? Like, If you're wasting your cycles on trying to piece that together across multiple platforms, you're missing the front end of the wave, right? You're out there surfing and you're missing your ride in opportunity. And so my goal is, how do we actually help people transform their story of, I need less budget on figuring out and less like capacity on figuring out infrastructure and getting and accessing and storing data in a productive way. And I want more of the team's focus on experimenting, turning into production that we can actually build live use cases around. Ryan, what would you say?
Yeah, I think that's great. I think to add to that, I worked with a leader once earlier on in my career that said, don't forget to ask the easy questions, right? We talked about a lot of complex things today, and things are only getting more complex. And so my advice, and something that I do with a lot of our customer base, is zoom out for a minute, right? We talked about openness. We talked about open standards. We talked about solving vendor lock-in through legacy and new product lines that are coming out by the thousands every single day, right? And it's confusing and it's really hard. It's also really easy to get stuck on one problem and not realize that you're not looking at the big picture, right? And so to start, because where to start is hard, admittedly, right? You're fighting fires and you're trying to look at big picture at the same time. I get it. Just start in a very binary way. Zoom out. Take a look at your architecture. Take a look at your infrastructure. Bucket them. You don't need everything listed out. And you can literally go, and I've done this exercise, green, red, right? Probably without thinking about it too long. And it doesn't have to be the most detailed thing in the world. But when you take a look at the components that make up your data stack, right? Which components are in an open place that are going to give you the ability to scale, and which are closed? Those are your red ones, right? That's your bottleneck. And so if you take a look at what's closed, then you actually have a great roadmap of what to research, where to go next, what conversation to have with David and team, right? On how do I solve for this? And how do I put something in place that'll help me scale for the future, right? And so if you go back and just start knocking those down one by one, and again, it sounds a lot easier saying it, right, like this, but first it starts off with that map. Understand where your vulnerabilities are, right, for scale. And that will actually dictate when you're ready to take the next big step with any data solution or outcome, right? You need to know. And so just in a very simple manner, zoom out and tag them, green, red, right? And it's amazing actually how enlightening that is, not just from a diagram, but from a conversation starter internally, right? It's a super helpful step. So that's my recommendation.
Yeah, appreciate it, gentlemen. And this has actually been an incredibly enriching conversation for me just to listen to, as somebody that works in this space, and hopefully for everyone on the phone or watching today, you're able to take one or two things, maybe 4 or 5 things back to your teams to say, hey, we need to be thinking about what standards matter and how they matter to our team, or how we're going to open up certain parts of our infrastructure, or how we help our teams build that resume that is for the next 10 years. Because we as leaders have an opportunity to help people build their resumes in the work that we're doing here as well. So with that, join me in thanking both David and Ryan for the conversation today. And then hang tight. I've got a couple more things that I want to make sure that you've got in front of you as we go into the back half of the year. Hey, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks for that, Jeff.
So David and Ryan, thank you for the conversation. We greatly appreciate the insights that you've shared with the folks on today's call and those of you that are watching the recording. And for those of you that are here, thank you for joining us. We really do appreciate you spending your time with us to learn more about how to be thinking about AI in your data work and learning from DBT and Databricks. Up at the top of your screen, you should be able to see a Talk to an Expert button. That's an easiest way for us to continue the conversation. And for you to be able to get some more information about DBT platform, as well as our Databricks partnership and the ways in which our companies work together. Second is Coalesce. It is next week. We're all putting a ton of effort in there to make it the best data and analytics engineering event of the year. If you'd like to join us in Vegas next week, we'd love to have you. And there's a registration in the chat. If you can't make it in person next week, please join us virtually. All of our keynotes and sessions will be there. And they're great. I've seen a lot of them already, and it's content you're not going to want to miss. And then lastly, right at the bottom, I believe on the webinar today is an opportunity for you to provide your feedback through our survey. We love to make sure that we're doing more of what you like and less of what you don't like. And so now's your opportunity to share with us the things you'd like us to do and learn from today's session. And with that, thanks again for spending your time with us. And if you need anything else, don't hesitate to reach out. We'll talk later.